Welcome back to the Piney Woods Homestead, y'all, where today we are about 1 degree from probably Hades. And y'all, I'm picking with that, but it is hot as blazes, y'all. It's about 90 degrees. I know that don't sound like a lot. When you throw in a humidity factor, it's pretty bad. So we're gonna take it in the kitchen today, and we're gonna see what Lisa has been doing to preserve the harvest. Y'all, thanks for stopping in. Hit that old thumbs up for us. Let's get into some cooler air.
I canned tomatoes last night, part of what we've got so far, and got those canned. I'm going to show you a few things to do to get the most out of your tomatoes. But the first thing with canning tomatoes, if you've ever noticed how once you pack them in the jar, you end up with a little bit of tomato and a lot of liquid. Now I have to give this tip credit to Old Alabama Gardener. If you don't follow him on YouTube, I highly recommend him. We lost him last year, but he was an incredible wealth of knowledge from everything from gardening to canning and anything that I have a question about. Generally, there's a video that he's done on it. And his tip for canning tomatoes to keep from having a little bit of tomato when you're done, and you know, I had the same problem. I'd have this much tomato and this much liquid. And what he would do is, as he was packing the tomatoes in there, he would just press them down, and that would push more of the liquid out. So now I get mostly a jar full of tomatoes with just a little bit of liquid. Another tip that I learned from Old Alabama Gardener was all of that liquid that you get from packing your tomatoes in the jars, to not throw it out. Now, once you're through with it, it's not really a tomato juice, it's more of a diluted tomato liquid. So what he would do would be cook it down on a low heat, so you're not going to scorch it or burn it, and reduce it by half. And that gives you a tomato sauce. So that's what I've got going here, is all the juice from the tomatoes I canned last night. And it was about 4 quarts, and this pot does have the lines showing. But what you can do is just stick it in there before you start boiling it, and then just measure. And it's been cooking for a while, so it was just under 3 1/4 inches, and it's about 2 3/4 now. So it's got a little bit to go, but once that gets cooked down, then I will water bath can it by the directions in the bottle canning book. Now the other thing I've done is the skins that you remove for canning tomatoes. I have put them on in my dehydrator. I don't have any of the really fine mesh liners for my trays. Can't find any to fit this machine, so I just used parchment paper, which you can use in a dehydrator, and I just cut them to fit the tray. They've been going overnight, anywhere from about 120 is what I kept it overnight. You can go up to 140, and it probably would have helped things speed up a little bit because we are so humid here right now. But these are done, and I'm going to get these popped out and get them processed into tomato powder. crust to them. You don't want them soft, you want them crispy. Those are ready to go. Matthew went down yesterday and pulled up our green beans that were in the in-ground garden so we could get our fall beans, October beans, green beans, peas planted. So this morning I went out and picked the green beans from the raised bed, which is predominantly where most of these came from. The rabbits really enjoyed the rabbit enjoyed the green beans in the garden. But that's fine. I still got just under a bushel. I've got to get these washed one more time and then get those. This should be 2 pressure canisters full, and I'll do that while the tomato sauce is continuing to reduce down, and I'll get the tomato powder ground up. I've got onions. This is some of the last that I still haven't got chopped up. I just chop them up and throw them in the freezer so we can enjoy them all winter, because they will not keep in our pantry in this house throughout the winter until we have more. And one tip, because I don't have a food mill or anything to process tomatoes to get the seeds out, so when I got ready to get the liquid from the tomatoes and the skins, I have a really fine mesh strainer that caught all of the seeds, didn't have to worry about them going into the sauce. So if you don't have one of those, don't worry about investing in them. I think I paid maybe $6 for this at like Marshall's or somewhere. So now we'll start popping these out. And the darker ones aren't burnt. I had some black creme. And it's okay if there's a few tomato seeds still left in there. Now that I've got them all pulled off, just going to put them in this little, it's like a Ninja bullet, but it's knockoff brand. And you can do this in the blender or the food processor. A coffee grinder would be great, but we don't have one. And all of this skin was off of about 25 or so pounds of tomatoes. It had all of the racks full in the dehydrator. So we'll see how much powder we get. I know it's not going to be near what the skins look like now. Over 4 ounces packed to the top. And when you go to use this, you're not going to be using a ton. You're going to be using, you know, maybe a tablespoonful. You can add it to soups. You can make tomato paste from it if you need some tomato paste. Make tomato sauce from it. Add it to pasta dishes. So there's a lot of uses for it, and it's utilizing every last bit of the tomatoes. The only thing that got thrown out was the seeds. Yes, I could have saved those, but since I processed a variety of different tomatoes at the same time, there would be no way for me to know which variety was which. So, but still, out of everything in those tomatoes, the only thing got thrown out was the seeds. Alright, y'all, we'll talk loud. We've got the exhaust fan going. We brought a fan from the bedroom in here. It's just incredibly hot. It's over 80 degrees in the house right now with the air on, which is the downside of canning season. But I've got my jars hot. They've been sterilized. I've had them in the oven for 225. So now I'm just going to go through and pack my beans in there. I like using wide mouths because you can just really get them packed in there a little more. You don't want to cram them in there. You do want to give them enough room to cook when they process. Jars packed with your beans, you just want to go through and add a teaspoon of canning salt. If you're doing quarts, if you're doing pints, you want a half a teaspoon, but it needs to be canning salt. And you're leaving a 1-inch headspace, and I'll go back through and get the bubbles out of these jars and then measure. I always add just a little under water, so it's better to be under than over, so you can just add a little bit of water to it. Once you get your jars full of water, you just want to go through and get all the air bubbles out. And I will say this, do not use a knife. I have seen some YouTube videos of people using a regular butter knife, and it's just not safe. You risk the chance of cracking the jar. These are just a few dollars, and if you don't want to get one of these, or if you don't have one when you go to can, a chopstick is a better alternative. But this one actually has the depth measurement. So right here is 1 inch, and you just hold it to the rim. So you can see I need to add just a splash of water. And usually the 1 inch is just right there at that rim. But I like to make sure. And then you just want to go through and wipe the lids off with the rims off with a little white vinegar, so you'll get a good seal. And that way it cleans off any, if you got a little bit of the salt on the rim, you're going to have to worry about that. But now, we're just going to get our lids and pans on here. And you may notice I do not simmer. I do not keep my lids in hot water simmering. Ball has actually changed the directions on their boxes to just wash and dry. My guess is, because ball was sold out a few years ago, I'm guessing that it has to do with the rubber quality not being the same. I actually still have a box. If you don't know, my grandparents and my dad owned a country store for many, many years. I think my dad was not even a teenager when my grandparents started it. And this is a box that was probably from the 90s that I still have. And it actually says on the directions on this to boil the lids, and or not boil, but to simmer them and to keep them simmered. And like I said, ball was bought out a year or so ago, and I really think that it has to do with the quality of this rubber is not probably what it used to be. So I just clean them and do what the box says. Some people do still simmer them, but because of knowing those two things, I don't. Because I don't want to ruin them and worry about the rubber being degraded from me keeping them in simmering water. And with green beans, they have to be pressure canned. These are hot. But you'll start the timer once your jiggler starts, or whatever type of canner you have, for 25 minutes. Hot, hot, hot. I do have tongs for this, but... And this is already reduced down, not quite to where I want it to. And you could actually keep cooking this down and make it into a tomato paste. But I'm just doing it as a basic tomato sauce, so we can add it to, you know, whatever dish we want, a pasta dish, chili, or anything like that. In the ball book, there's about 3 or 4 different seasoning blends that you can add to their tomato sauce recipe. I think there's a Cajun blend, an Italian blend, and I think a Mexican blend. But like I said, I'm just going to leave this basic, and then we can just add, we could add the seasonings from that recipe if we wanted to, but generally we just add seasonings to our taste. So that's what I'm going to do here, but I'm going to can them in the water bath canner in 12-ounce jars, which will be all that we need. A pint would be too much, and half pint would obviously be too small for a family of 3. So I'm going to do it in those 12-ounce jars, and they will process by, I think it's 25 minutes maybe, don't quote me on that, but it'll be the recipe, the processing recipe that's in the ball blue book. Alright y'all, thanks for hanging out with us this evening. Matthew's making faces at me. Thanks for hanging out while I got some stuff done today, and we appreciate you watching. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, and if you've subscribed to us, we do really, truly appreciate y'all. And we'll see you on the next one, guys. Have a great evening.